The Galactic Hall was a place of shining wonders. It's built from glass and light, where the stars themselves seemed to rest on the ceiling. Creatures from 100 different worlds filled the air with color and sound. Some floated, some walked, and some spoke through music instead of words. Every race had come dressed in symbols of pride and history-long robes, shining jewels, feathers, or glowing skin. Among them stood a single human. His name was Eli Ward, a 24-year-old diplomat's aide from Earth, compared to the grand and beautiful aliens around him. He looked almost plain short brown hair, simple navy blue uniform, and no jewelry of any kind. His hands were steady, his back straight, but there was a quiet thoughtfulness in his eyes that made people stop and notice. For the first time in history, humanity had been invited to the Valari Empire's royal gathering. It was not just a meeting yet, it was a symbol of recognition, a sign that Earth was finally being seen as part of the galactic community. For humans, this was a dream. For Eli, it was also a test. He wasn't a warrior or a leader, just a young man trusted to stand for billions of people. He had spent the night before rehearsing polite words in front of a mirror, reminding himself to bow just right, to smile when spoken to, and to never, ever forget that he carried his planet's image in every gesture. Yet even with all his practice, when he entered the hall, the size of it made his heart tremble. At the far end of the chamber, a door of pure silver opened, and the crowd grew silent. The Valari royal family entered with slow, graceful steps. Their bodies shimmered with a faint silver glow, their eyes bright and cool, like stars frozen in midwinter. At the center walked Princess Eris Valara, the 19-year-old heir to one of the oldest empires in the galaxy. She was beautiful in the way a storm is beautiful cold, perfect and powerful. Every move she made carried the weight of generations. Her long silver hair flowed behind her like liquid light. When she looked across the hall, people bowed their heads without needing to be told. When her gaze fell on Eli, she paused. It was the first time she had ever seen a human in person. She had heard stories of coarse dailies, of short-lived creatures full of emotion and fire, a young race that dreamed too big and burned too bright. To her, humans were fascinating in the same way small animals were. Curious, brave, but fragile. Eli felt her eyes on him, took a careful breath, stepped forward, and bowed as he had practiced. "It is an honor to meet you, Princess Eris," he said, his voice steady, polite, and warm. For a moment, she said nothing. Her gaze moved from his worn boots to his simple uniform. Then, with a slight tilt of her head, she said softly, "You speak as if your world matters here." The words were not shouted. They were quiet, but they carried a cold edge that cut through the silence of the hall. "Humans," she continued, "you burn fast and fade quickly. Why do your kind reach for the stars, as if you belong among them?" The air grew still. Dozens of alien eyes turned toward Eli. Some watched in pity, some in amusement.
Oh.
No one dared to speak. Eli stood there, his hand still slightly raised from his bow. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to stop. Inside, his chest ached not from anger, but from something deeper, like disappointment. He could have defended himself. He could have said that humanity had survived war, hunger, and pain. That they had crossed the void not because they were powerful, but because they were stubborn enough to try. But instead, he did something no one expected. He slowly lowered his hand. His expression stayed calm, but his eyes softened, not weak, just tired. He gave a small nod, turned around, and began to walk away. No word, no anger, no argument. The sound of his boots against the shining floor echoed through the hall louder than any voice. Every step carried quiet dignity, the kind that didn't need to prove itself. The aliens watched, confused and curious. The princess stood frozen, her lips slightly parted, unsure what she had just witnessed. Eli didn't look back. He walked toward the great doors of the hall, his shoulders straight, his silence stronger than any speech. And when the doors closed behind him, the room remained quiet for a long, long time. For a long moment after Eli left, no one in the great hall spoke. The air itself seemed frozen, as if sound was afraid to return. The young human's footsteps had faded, but something else remained as strange, heavy stillness that no one could name. The guards looked uncertain. Ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. A few alien nobles whispered behind jeweled hands, their voices nervous and sharp. Never before had anyone walked away from a Valari royal, especially not a representative of a new and fragile world. Princess Eris stood perfectly still, her silver eyes wide with disbelief. She had expected the human to argue, to beg, or at least to defend himself. She had thought he would show some kind of reaction, anger, shame, pride, anything. But his silence had left her speechless. She looked down at her own reflection in the crystal floor and saw not a princess, but a stranger. For the first time in her life, she felt unsure of her power. Her attendant, an older scholar named Saren, approached carefully. "Your Highness," he whispered, "shall I summon the human back?" "Perhaps we can." "No," she interrupted softly. Her voice trembled, though she tried to hide it. "Let him go." Saren bowed, but his wise old eyes lingered on her face. "As you wish, my princess." When he left, Iris turned and looked around the hall. The faces she saw were not filled with the usual admiration or awe. There was something else in their eyes, confusion, maybe even doubt. For the first time, she felt the weight of her own words pressing down on her. That night, Iris could not sleep. The image of the young human turning away replayed in her mind again and again. The quiet strength in his walk haunted her. He hadn't looked weak. He hadn't looked afraid. If anything, he had looked free from needing to prove anything to anyone. She sat by her window, looking out at the twin moons of Valara as they cast soft light over the palace. Why did he walk away? She whispered to herself. Does he not know who I am? The night breeze answered only with silence. Far below the royal towers, in the guest quarters meant for visiting diplomats, Eli sat alone at his desk. The soft hum of alien music drifted through the walls. His mind was calm, though a part of him still felt heavy. He wasn't angry at the princess. He had expected such treatment. Humans were new to the galactic stage, still seen as children among ancient empires. He sighed, looking down at his open notebook where he had written one sentence: "Respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned." He stared at the words for a long time, then closed the book and looked out the window. The alien stars outside looked no different from Earth's. The same quiet beauty, the same endless distance. For all their power, even the mighty Valari lived under the same sky. The next morning, whispers filled the palace. Word of the incident had spread far beyond the hall. Some aliens mocked the human for his pride. Others admired his calm. Few older ambassadors, those who had lived through wars and peace treaties, nodded quietly and said, "That is the human way." They carry pride in silence. Princess Eris listened to every rumor, every whisper, every joke. But instead of anger, she felt something else: curiosity. When she entered the grand dining hall later that day, her usual confidence was gone. She looked around for the human, but did not see him. For the first time, the room felt too large, too empty. Saren stood beside her, noticing her distraction. "You were thinking about him," he said gently. Eris turned her head away, trying to appear calm. He was rude. He disrespected the royal line. The old scholar smiled faintly. "Was he rude, Your Highness? Did he show you a reflection of yourself that you did not wish to see?" His words sank into her heart like soft rain. She didn't reply. Later, when she finally saw Eli, again walking quietly through the corridor, helping a servant carry a heavy box, something inside her changed. He did not look proud or defiant. Kind. And as she watched him, Princess Eris realized that she, the future ruler of an ancient empire, had never once seen someone turn away from her without fear or hatred and lead peace. For the first time in her 19 years, the royal heart of Valara began to feel something it had never known before. Respect. The morning sun spilled its golden light through the tall windows of the Valari palace. Eli moved quietly among the staff, and diplomats carrying messages, translating documents, and helping wherever he could. There was no fanfare, no desire for attention. He was just a human doing his work with care. Some aliens noticed him and smiled politely. Others whispered behind jeweled hands. "He is young, so small," said one. "Yet he walks like he owns the hall." A few of the older Valari observers leaned forward, their eyes thoughtful. They had seen many proud species over the centuries, species that demanded attention, shouted orders, or flaunted their power. And yet here was a human, gentle in gesture, but strong in presence. Princess Eris watched him from the balcony above. At first, she intended to scold him or question his bold silence from the day before. But as she observed him quietly, helping a tired servant carry a crate, offering his chair to an older ambassador, and pausing to answer a question with patient clarity, something shifted inside her. She had never seen power in this form. It was not about dominance. It was not about titles or sharp words. It was about heart. Every small act he didn't notice by most spoke of a strength that could not be measured in crowns or armies. Later that day, an alien aide approached Eli. "Why do you help so freely?" the aide asked, slightly puzzled. "Why do you not ask for reward, recognition, or praise?" Eli smiled softly. "Because that is not why we help," he said. "Humans believe that kindness is its own reward. Respect comes from action, not demand, and dignity is stronger when it is quiet." The aide blinked. He had expected a boast or an excuse. Instead, he found wisdom in a simple young human's words. The tale of the silent human began to spread not as gossip, but as something deeper, something even the elders could admire. Princess Aris felt a strange pull in her chest. She tried to hide it, reminding herself she was a princess, the heir to an empire. She had been taught that humans were fragile, emotional, and unworthy of serious consideration. And yet the quiet human before her did not fit any of those assumptions. That evening, during the royal council, Eris found herself observing Eli again. While most of the young human diplomats were anxious and fidgeting, he remained steady. His posture was calm. His voice was clear. Even the simplest words carried weight because they were spoken with honesty. "Humans are new here," Eris whispered. "To Saren, yet he moves as though he belongs more than some of our own council members." Saren nodded. "Power is not always in what one controls, Your Highness. Sometimes it is in how one carries oneself." Eris could not look away. Every time Eli spoke, every time he moved, she felt a quiet admiration stirring in her heart, admiration mixed with confusion. How could such a small and young species be so strong without trying to prove it? That night she could not sleep. She walked alone through the palace gardens, thinking about the human who had refused to respond to her insult. She remembered the way he had turned, the quiet dignity in his step, the calm patience in every small act. She realized something she had never admitted to herself. She had underestimated humans. She had thought of them as fragile, emotional, and naive. And yet here was one young human who had shown courage, patience, and a strength that came not from weapons or power, but from something far older principles. Eli, on his part, remained unaware of the impact he had made. He continued quietly, helping, observing, speaking only when necessary, and always with humility. For him, this was simply the human way. By the end of the week, whispers around the palace had changed. Aliens who had doubted humanity began to nod respectfully. Even Princess Aris found herself thinking about him constantly, wondering why one young human could carry himself with such quiet greatness, while so many others in the galaxy demanded attention and feared silence. And slowly, almost without realizing it, Princess Aris felt the first stirrings of a lesson she would never forget. True strength does not roar. True strength walks quietly, but leaves a mark that echoes forever. The council hall was vast, filled with delegates from dozens of worlds. The walls shimmered with flowing lights that reacted to the mood of the room, and the floor reflected every movement like water. For centuries, the Valari had used this hall to negotiate treaties, resolve disputes, and display their power. Every race that entered had felt the weight of Valari tradition. Today, however, a young human was about to change the atmosphere. Eli stood quietly at the edge of the room, holding his notes. His superior had fallen ill, leaving him to represent Earth before the council. Many of the delegates had raised eyebrows when they learned this. Single human, young and inexperienced, expected to speak before the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Some even whispered that he would fail spectacularly. Princess Eris sat on the elevated platform, watching him closely. She remembered the day he had turned and walked away without a word. She remembered the dignity in his silence. Now, she wondered if that same quiet strength could fill the hall. Eli cleared his throat, stepped forward, and began to speak. His voice was calm, steady, and surprisingly clear, carrying across the room without needing to be raised. "Honored delegates," he said, "humans are new to your stars. Our world is young. We have known struggle, and we have known failure, but we have also known persistence. We have crossed oceans and deserts, survived storms and wars, and reached for the stars despite every obstacle. We speak not because we think we are greater than any of you, but because we believe in trying, in learning, and in respecting those who walk beside us." The room was silent. The oldest delegates leaned forward, listening. Many of the younger ones, expecting arrogance or excuses, felt something strange stirring in their hearts. This human did not demand respect. He did not insult or boast, simply spoke with honesty. Eli continued, "Respect is not something that can be demanded, nor is power measured only in fleets or crowns. Strength is found in action, in the choices we make, and in how we treat others. Humans may be young, small, and imperfect, but we do not walk through the galaxy seeking to prove our worth. We walk quietly, learning, helping, and striving to be better each day." He paused, letting the words sink in. Eyes that had been skeptical now held admiration. Some delegates whispered softly to each other. Princess Eris sat, stunned. She had always believed strength was in titles, power, and command. Yet here was a human who carried strength like a shield, quiet but undeniable. When Eli finished, he bowed lightly and stepped back, as if his duty had been completed. The room remained quiet for a heartbeat longer than expected, before applause slowly began, hesitant at first, then growing louder. Some delegates clapped with admiration, others with surprise. Princess Eris felt her chest tighten. She remembered her own arrogance, the sharp words she had spoken to him. She realized that he had not only represented Earth, but he had also shown her a truth she could not ignore. Strength is not always loud. Respect is not always commanded. Later, in her private quarters, Reese could not stop thinking about the human's speech. She replayed every word in her mind, every pause, every gesture. She remembered how he had helped the servants, how he had listened patiently, how he had carried himself with dignity even when insulted. She realized that for the first time. In her life, she had seen someone more powerful than titles or heritage could measure. And that person was a young human, quiet, small, and gentle, but unshakably strong. As the moons of Valara rose, Reese stood by her window and whispered into the night, "What kind of strength is this that does not roar, yet shakes the hearts?" Of those who hear it, somewhere far below, Eli worked late into the night, unaware of the lesson he had taught, not through anger, not through challenge, but through his quiet dignity. And in that moment, Princess Eris understood that she had witnessed something rare, a power that did not demand fear, but earned respect. The observation dome of the Velar Palace stretched high above the city, its glass walls giving a breathtaking view of the twin moons casting soft light across the palace grounds. Tonight, the stars looked brighter than usual. The air carried a faint hum of distant ships returning from the outer colonies. Princess Eris stood alone, her hands resting on the railing. She had spent the entire evening in thought, replaying the events of the past week. The council meeting had ended hours ago, but her mind was not at rest. Every detail about the human, the way he had spoken, the way he had moved, the calm dignity in his presence kept returning to her. She had always believed that words could command respect, that power was in titles and displays of authority. But Eli had shown her something different. He had not demanded respect, he had earned it. And it hurt her in a way she had never expected. The soft sound of footsteps made her turn. There he was, Ellie Ward, standing quietly near the far end of the dome. His eyes were on the stars, his posture calm, unassuming. He had not noticed her yet. "Eli," she called softly. He turned, startled for a moment, but then offered her a polite nod. "Princess Aris," he said simply, his voice even and calm. She stepped closer, her silver hair catching the light of the moons. I was wrong," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "When I spoke to you the other day, I was cruel. I underestimated you, underestimated your world." Eli tilted his head, studying her expression. He did not smile, did not offer words of comfort. He simply waited, calm and patient. "Why didn't you answer me?" Aris asked, her eyes searching his. "Why did you turn and walk away without a word?" Eli looked down at the floor for a moment, then back to her. "Because I wasn't defending myself," he said softly. "I was defending what I represent. Earth may be small, but our hearts are not. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is walk away and let actions speak louder than words." Her chest tightened. She had never heard anything like this before. In all her life, no one had made her feel the weight of their strength without raising a hand or a voice. Eli's quietness was stronger than any army she had ever known. I didn't understand," she whispered, her voice nearly breaking. "I thought respect could be demanded. I thought power was only in the crown and the command. But you've shown me it is something else entirely." Eli's lips curved into a faint, gentle smile. "Words can wound, but silence can heal," he said. "And understanding can grow even in the smallest gestures." Aris took a deep breath, feeling a mix of shame and admiration. She realized that she had learned a lesson no counsel or teacher could ever have given her. She had learned humility. She had learned patience. She had learned that strength could exist quietly, without fanfare, without fear, and without pride.
I want to
learn from you," she said finally, her voice steadying. "Not just about Earth, but about how to be strong in the right way." Eli's eyes softened. "Then you have already begun," he replied. "The first step is listening. The next is choosing what kind of strength you want to show." The twin moons reflected in their eyes, and for a moment, the vast galaxy outside seemed smaller, intimate and gentle. Princess Aris realized that in a single week, a human someone so young, so simple, and so quiet had changed the way she saw the universe. For the first time, she felt the kind of respect that could not be given by titles, nor taken by force. It had to be earned, silently, patiently, and with heart, and in that quiet observation dome under the watchful stars. Aris promised herself she would never forget the lesson Eli had shown her. Sometimes the strongest voices are the ones left unspoken. The days that followed were different for Princess Aris. She walked through the palace corridors with a new awareness, noticing things she had never paid attention to before. Servants who carried heavy trays, young aides struggling with complex scrolls, older ambassadors quietly observing council debate. She began to see them all. And in seeing them, she began to understand. Eli's influence was subtle, but undeniable. Every time she remembered the human's quiet dignity, she felt a tug in her heart, reminding her that true strength did not roar or demand attention. She began to listen more in council meetings, asking questions instead of issuing commands. She smiled at staff instead of nodding politely from a distance. The palace, which had once been cold and formal, felt warmer, more alive. Eli, unaware of the impact he had, continued his work quietly. He translated treaties, assisted ambassadors, and helped solve small problems that no one else seemed to notice. He never sought recognition, yet everyone watched him and began to notice the effect of his steady presence. Delegates whispered about the human who did not brag, who did not rush, and who treated everyone with the same calm respect. One afternoon, Princess Aris invited Eli to join her council session. She had never done this for any other guest. Her advisors were surprised, even amused. "Why allow a human to speak in our council?" one asked, puzzled. Aris did not answer immediately. She simply watched Eli as he entered, carrying only a small notebook and a quiet confidence. When the session began, she noticed how he listened patiently, considered every opinion carefully, and spoke only when he had something meaningful to say. His words were clear and measured, never harsh, never demanding, but somehow impossible to ignore. After the session, some council members approached Eris privately. "The human," they said quietly, "has shown a wisdom beyond his years. We underestimated him." Eris nodded, her mind full of thoughts she could not yet express. "He is teaching me too," she said softly, almost to herself. That evening, she found Eli walking through the palace gardens, the twin moons casting silver light on the flowers and fountains. He was collecting himself after a long day, unaware of her gaze. "You continue to impress everyone," she said, stepping closer. Her voice was soft, but there was a warmth and sincerity in it that Eli noticed immediately. He glanced at her and gave a small, polite nod. "I try to do what is right, Princess," he said simply. Eris hesitated, then spoke from her heart. "You've changed the way I see the world. I never realized how much power can be in quiet patience, in kindness, and in dignity. You've made me want to be better." Eli's eyes softened, and he smiled faintly. "The world is full of choices, Your Highness. Sometimes it takes one small example to remind people of what they can be." The princess looked at him, the silver light reflecting in her eyes. "You've reminded me that respect is earned, not commanded. That strength is shown in actions, not titles. And that even someone small can teach the mightiest lesson." For the first time, she felt a peace she had never known. Her heart was no longer weighed by arrogance or the constant need to prove herself. Instead, it was filled with understanding, humility, and a quiet pride, not in her own power, but in the lessons she was learning from someone unexpected. From that day forward, Princess Aris began to act differently, not just in private, but publicly. She spoke with patience and calm. She praised those who deserved recognition. She corrected her own mistakes openly, showing a new kind of courage. The palace began to notice the change. The court, once cold and rigid, felt lighter, brighter, and more alive. And always, in the quiet corners of her mind, Aris remembered the human who had turned and walked away without a word, the one who had taught her that the strongest hearts often speak the least, and that the most powerful influence is earned through quiet, consistent dignity. The lesson was clear. Sometimes, the smallest and quietest among us can change the world. Years passed, and the Valari Empire continued to shine among the stars. Princess Aris had grown into her role as empress, wise, calm, and respected, not for fear or command, but for the quiet strength she carried in her decisions. And through every council, every negotiation, every moment of leadership, she remembered the young human who had first taught her the meaning of true dignity. Eli Ward had long since returned to Earth. He continued his work as a diplomat, quietly building bridges, learning, and teaching humanity's principles of patience and respect. He had not sought recognition, yet the impact he left on the Valari court was undeniable. His example had changed one of the most powerful leaders in the galaxy, and through her, it rippled outward to countless worlds. The first decree of Empress Aris reflected the lesson she had learned that fateful week. Written in silver letters along the walls of the council chamber, it read, "Every species, no matter how young or small, deserves dignity and respect. Strength is measured not by power over others, but by courage, patience, and compassion." Every council member, every ambassador, every Valari citizen knew the story of the human who had walked away without a word. They spoke of him not as a child of Earth, but as a symbol of what humanity represented: resilience, humility, and the quiet courage to stand tall even when the odds were against them. One evening, Eris stood in the observation dome, just as she had years before. Looking out at the twin moons of Valara, the stars sparkled like scattered jewels, and the galaxy seemed endless and full of possibilities. She remembered that first moment, the human's calm gaze, the way he had lowered his hand and turned. The strength in his silence, she whispered into the night. "You showed me what true power is. Eli, you taught me to listen, to act, to be humble, and to see strength where it is often ignored. The galaxy is better because of you." Her advisors, standing silently behind her, did not interrupt. They knew she was speaking to someone far away. Yet somehow, through the strength of her words, Eli's influence could be felt in the room. Eris smiled softly and turned to face the council chamber, now filled with young ambassadors from hundreds of worlds. She spoke to them not as a ruler, commanding obedience, but as a teacher, sharing a truth. True strength is not in the crown or in armies. True strength is in the choices we make, in the patience we show, and in the respect we give to all, no matter how small. Let this be our guide. The young ambassadors listened, wide-eyed, and for many, it was a lesson they would never forget. The galaxy was watching, and in that moment, humanity's quiet courage had been immortalized, far across the stars. On a small blue planet called Earth, Eli looked up at the night sky. He did not know the full impact of his actions, yet he felt a quiet contentment. He had acted with dignity, patience, and kindness, and that had been enough. Sometimes, he thought, all that was required to change a universe was to walk away with your head held high and your heart strong in the centuries that followed. The story of the human who had refused to fight, insult or boast became legend in the Valari Empire. Children grew up learning that courage was measured in character, and that even the youngest, smallest, or most unexpected among them could leave a mark that would echo through the stars. And so, the quiet human who had turned and walked away without a word became an enduring symbol, a reminder that dignity, humility, and patience could reshape hearts, empires, and even the galaxy itself. The lesson was clear to all who heard it. Humans may be small, but their hearts are limitless. And in that truth, the Valari Empire and perhaps the entire galaxy was forever changed.